Thanks for joining me in this discussion of cashing out at full value. This discussion will concentrate on strategic planning and a strategic thinking process that will be invaluable for middle market companies. Quite often middle market companies don't spend the time necessary for strategic planning because, let's face it, the daily work requirements consume all their energy. But I'm going to try and prove to you how valuable strategic planning can be, and hopefully from this exercise you'll be able to tailor it, adapt it to your size business. That's my goal. 5 things we're going to talk about today. First of all, strategic planning, why bother? We'll get into that in a minute. Secondly, what's the definition of a strategic plan? Thirdly, how do you make a strategic plan? How do you develop one? Fourth, what does it look like when you're done? Is it a 75-page gilt-edged book that you put on your bookshelf, or is it something that's a usable management tool? Next, once you finish your strategic plan, do you change your management process at all? So we're going to talk about 5 things. First of all, why bother? Well, let me ask you a question. Do you ever invest in something like a long-term asset plant? Expand your plant and facilities. And my question is, how do you justify that if you don't think out 3, 5, 10 years? Strategic planning on a routine basis will help you identify those opportunities, whether it be a plant, new equipment purchases, new product lines, whatever, to help you achieve your business goals. So why bother? Well, it's important because it allows you to look forward, allocate your resources, and identify resources that you may need, whether it be people or monetary resources, so that you can achieve your objectives. Some things do require years to implement. Better to think out ahead years than be surprised. Now, it's important to understand that you will not develop a perfect strategic plan. There's no such thing. But our objective in strategic planning is to think beyond your horizon. Think beyond what you typically do and talk about, with your staff, about the competitive environment, the economic environment, I'll call it the global environment, which you may not focus on in the day-to-day firefights. So, why bother? I'd also like to suggest that when you do a strategic plan, you set stretch goals. Set stretch goals that might be incomprehensible on a year-to-year basis, but when you step back and look at your available resources, the competitive environment, and your capabilities within the company, you may decide a stretch goal is worthwhile. So why bother? Let's say it's important and it will help you achieve goals you may never have considered possible before. Second point, definition of strategic planning. I keep it simple. It is beyond your traditional horizon. Beyond your traditional horizon. Many mid-sized companies do an annual budget that is comprised primarily of an Excel model, financial numbers, without a lot of activities identified. The strategic plan will get you to think beyond your typical horizon. I like to think of 3 to 5 years, 3 years being ideal. Close enough where you can have tangible results, far enough out where you have to think beyond 12 months, basically. I want you to think differently in your strategic plan. Don't think incrementally. Think about your environment, your competitive environment, the global economic environment, what's happening with the federal interest rates. I mean, just everything. It's a brainstorming session that will help you refocus your energies on things that are most important to achieve your objectives. There isn't any magic about a strategic plan. I've done strategic plans in a day where all we're doing is refocusing energy beyond the day-to-day work environment. It's a strategic plan. Is it a great one? No. Is it appropriate for that size business in their current environment? Yes, it worked, because we got them out of their daily trench thinking. So it's good. Next point, how do you develop a strategic plan? You've probably heard many different scenarios about how to do it. I have a process that I use that I adapt to small and large companies. I've used the process everywhere from a $3 million company to a $1 billion company. Now, I will tell you the complexity of a $1 billion strategic plan is much more in-depth than a small company. But again, what we're doing is an exercise to try and understand how to improve value in any given company. So a $1 billion strategic plan may span 6 weeks. A $3 million strategic plan may span 3 or 4 days. And it's not 100% of the days. It's an iterative process where we challenge each other about known things, assessment, I'll call it, in all the areas of your business. Remember that matrix we put together? People, process, plant, product, and market. And down the left side, the functional areas, logistics, operations, sales, marketing, etc. I get people to think about that. That's the objective in a strategic plan. Now, what should it normally take? Typically, I'll spend maybe 15 days working with a middle market company to create a strategic plan. And we will work with all of the functional areas. All of the functional areas. Now, one thing to be certain, in middle market companies, you may not have separate executives for sales and marketing or even new product development. They may be controlled by one person. But the topics have to be addressed. Address the topics. Challenge those topics with whoever is responsible to say, how do we get new products in here? What do we need to be competitive and successful in 3 years? Who will our competitors be? Now, in the strategic plan, there are a couple of basic components. We're going to have a vision or a mission. And I say vision or a mission. In small companies, sometimes they get to be combined. And it works. It's okay. A vision is a lofty, kind of far-reaching, challenging discussion of what the company wants to be. The mission is more specific with, I'll call it more deliverables. We're going to work in the service market within 500 miles of here. Very specific. But vision and mission, sometimes separate, sometimes combined. One of the other things in a strategic plan is an assessment. An assessment. Inside and outside the company. Inside, organization, processes, facilities, are they adequate to get to where we want to be? If you set up a strategic plan and you decide you would like to have 30% growth in the next 3 years, do you have to get new facilities? Do you have to have more sales reps? Do you need more products to get 30% growth? Well, it's best to think about it a year or two in advance so that you can begin to execute those things. We want to look at the macro environment in our assessment. So that is, understand the tax environment, the economic environment, the global competitive environment. We want to understand what impact that will have. You certainly don't want to plan 30% growth when there is a recession going on. It's impractical in most cases. But it's your strategy. How do you want to grow? Where do you want to be in a few years? In addition to the assessment, we want to look at market shares, individual competitors, the competitive conditions. Perhaps look at competitive products, perhaps what technology impact there will be. Again, we're going to look at both axes of that matrix that we talked about. Functional areas down the left, particular topics across the top. People, process, plant, product, and market. We want to see where we are today and what it's going to take to get us to where we need to be in the future. So we've got the elements of it. Vision, mission, an assessment, internal and a competitive assessment, and macro environment, understanding of the macro environment. Now, as we work with the business team that's responsible for all those functions and all of those complementing activities, people, process, product, plant, market, we want to challenge them for continuous improvement, and we want to find out what they need to do to reach your goals and objectives. Goals and objectives can be financial, they can be market position, they can be competitive position. But you want to set up your goals and measure your performance. Measure your performance, and that includes timelines and costs and benefits of your actions. So there you go. That's 10, 15 pages of strategy. It includes where you want to go, an assessment of where you are, and how you're going to get there. 1, 2, 3. Now, once you do that, you want to have reporting mechanisms to check your progress. Personally, I like a 3-year plan, annualized each year. I like the first year of the plan to be set up by quarters, and I like goals and objectives for all of those time periods. So quarterly objectives that are near-term deliverables and broader objectives for years 2 and 3. A broad example, a broad objective example would be something like implement a new data system in 2 years. Well, you'll have near-term objectives and then you'll have broader objectives as you get to year 2 because you don't have enough specificity. New product launches. Perhaps you'll have to acquire people or set up a joint venture. Those are longer-term things that you might slot in year 2 and year 3. That's a good thing. They are reminders periodically of your long-term objectives. Now, when I put these goals and objectives together, I like to have a structure where each person in your executive staff knows their responsibility in timing and deliverable. And then I have quarterly meetings in the first year so that we can manage those deliverables, find out where we're better or worse than objective. So strategic planning, first of all, I consider it a critical element in improving the value of your company so that you can cash out at full value. And within strategic planning, 5 things we talked about. First, why bother? Because it's essential. When you get out 2 or 3 years, you can lose sight of those goals unless they're documented and you measure periodically against that, your performance against those. Definition of a strategic plan, we covered that. We're going to have a vision, perhaps vision, mission combined. We're going to have assessment. We're going to have goals and objectives, and we're going to have measurable deliverables. How to develop it? It changes with every company. The size and what it looks like will vary from company to company depending on size, market, complexity of your goals. What's it look like? As I said, 10 to 15 pages perhaps for a middle market company. And you also want management processes that allow you to manage on a near-term basis, quarterly for the next year, annually for the next 3 years, and you have a plan. Using this process, you will be able to improve your value and you will improve your capability of cashing out at full value. Thanks for joining me. See you next time.